Welcome, welcome, welcome everyone to our top teaching of pronunciation interest group event. Today we're going to hear from Lange on intonation. Have we been teaching our students to stress too many words? This is a good question. She's going to talk about that. Give us some exercises to do too. So I hope that you all received my message that I sent, except a couple of 2 reminders. You should have gotten one today around 8 o'clock in the morning, along with a link to a handout. And the handout, I requested you to print it out so that you could scribble along and do the exercise with us. So if you've got your handout handy, then you'll be able to do the activity as Ellen has planned for us. We are top, and our address on our message board is catesol@catesol.org. I hope that all of you are members of TOP. That means that you have opted into the Teaching of Pronunciation message board at CATESOL. We are also available on Facebook, so look for us there too. I want to present to you our team of Teaching of Pronunciation IG coordinators. Randy, say hi to us, Randy.
Hello, everybody. Good morning.
And he is our assistant coordinator. I am a going on co-founder and co-coordinator of TOP, and our co-coordinator this year and last year, Jadine Elvin from CSU Fresno. All right, now, oh, where are you? Oh, there you are. Hello, Jadine, you're here. Thank you. Okay, great. So that's our top team for this year. And we hope that you will continue to be with us. I noticed that there are 48 registrations, 13 of whom are non-members. So if you are a non-member, you may consider becoming a member, because there are really a lot of benefits to being a member of CATESOL. You can see that we are a very vibrant group of English language teachers in California and in other places too, because they know that CATESOL is pretty hot. So a lot of them are from out of state and they join us. We have our peer-reviewed language publication, the CATESOL Journal, and we have monthly CATESOL update announcements. We have discounts to regional and state conferences. There's free access to an unlimited number of events like the ones that we are giving here today and next month and every month with TOP. You have interaction, networking, learning opportunities, and teaching opportunities with our CATESOL members at conferences and other events. Now, we're doing everything remotely this year, and we do hope to get back to face-to-face sometime in the foreseeable future. We have online discussions with like-minded professionals on our message boards. You have access to a job bank in case you are looking for employment, access to teaching resources, and there is money. There are grants, there are awards that are available for both teachers and students. So graduate students, if you are among us, we are giving away money to you to help you gain professional development, attend conferences, and so forth. I would like now to let you know that we are going to hear from a wonderful person called Ellen Lange. Here's Ellen. Let's look at Ellen. Now, what do you know about Ellen? Ellen has been around in the ESL field for years. She taught writing for both ESL and EFL students, and regular English composition, academic skills at UC Davis for 35 years. And she's one of those people who's, quote, retired. So in her retirement, she's been teaching at an IEP at UC Davis in the continuing and professional education program. And she's been able to work with her first love, pronunciation, through teaching presentation skills in short-term programs, including those designed specifically for STEM graduate students. And those of you who have been in CATESOL for a while know that Ellen has been a very committed member of TESOL since 1979, maybe before some of us were born, including service as CATESOL president from 2013 to 2014, and also the college university chair, program editor, co-chair of regional CATESOL conferences. These are just some of the things that she has brought to CATESOL. So now let's hear from Ellen. You're on.
Okay, can everybody see and hear me?
I can.
Yes.
Randall, you'll have to tell me since you are the doorkeeper or the doorman.
Yep, you look good, Ellen.
Door person. Okay.
And just a minute before you get started, I wanted to say that in case you didn't read your email this morning to get the link for the handout, I'm going to paste it in the chat and you can go ahead and take a look at it, download
And
it.
there are even fewer worries because I have it all on slides as well. So we've got plan A, plan B, plan C. But I just wanted to share this with you before we start. Happy spring, everyone. I've got these in my house to make me happy. Okay, let's start. By the way, you can see that I'm using a black background with kind of a pinkish brown light color for the text. That happens to be the choice of Steve Jobs, and I've been using it just for fun. And I kind of like it. So the title of my talk today is, are we teaching our students to stress too many content words? Now, this is not, I didn't invent this. So let's look at the outline of the talk. First, I'm going to give you the background to what I call the new intonation, speaking with meaning, how to understand it, how to teach it, and then you do it. So don't get scared because I know whenever when I'm listening to something and we have, breakouts and everything, I get paranoid. But don't get paranoid because you're going to be able to do it. So here's the background. In 2016 at PSLLT, I don't think I pronounced it right, but what it is pronunciation in second language learning and teaching. And they had their conference. Dr. Wayne Dickerson, and he's from University of Illinois, Urbana, said we were teaching our ESL students, and let's also put EFL in there, to stress too many content words in a phrase, or what we call a thought group. And the title of this talk was The Baby in the Rhythmic Bathwater. And I thought, what? So let's have a look. His message was, native English speakers do not accent every content word, nor do they deliver accents at regular intervals. To do so is to speak an unknown variety of English that challenges listeners' ability to understand. And right off the bat, I thought, Ellen, you're standing in front of a classroom. Are you listening to what you sound like? And that kind of started it. And this was only a 20-minute talk. And he said that a phrase or thought group needed only an anchor peak and a primary peak, that the rest of the phrase was valleys. And he also started talking about prominence. I was totally lost, to tell you the truth. Now this, and I'm sorry if this is crooked, but that was one of my scanning jobs. So he showed this little picture of an anchor peak and a primary peak and valleys. Okay. And then he showed this, showing these kind of things. And I thought, huh? So let me break it down for you. He said this was the old way, us and our textbooks. Now, I'm not here to criticize anybody or anything in our textbooks. I've been in this stuff for years. We've had stuff all over the place. And I can't even remember how I used to teach pronunciation. But so this is not a criticism thing. This is looking at what he had to say and does it work? So what he was trying to show here is we were teaching, I live 7 blocks from campus, and actually campus would have been a little higher. And he said, no, it needs to go, I live 7 blocks from campus, so that you're speaking with meaning. And I started to think about that. And I thought, you know what? I think he's got something here. And here's another one. His popular seminar is rarely canceled. Instead of his popular seminar is rarely canceled. And I know that I was speaking like this in the classroom on the left-hand side, but I wasn't thinking about it too much because I was teaching writing, I was teaching all sorts of other skills. And so I just, kind of let it go. I knew he was right, but how to understand it? Because remember, we had that picture of mountains and valleys. And worst of all, how on God's green earth was I going to teach it? And we all kind of left that room thinking, huh? But I'm the kind of person that, I'm like a dog with a bone. When I get a hold of that bone, I'm hanging on it. So I decided I better think about teaching this stuff because I started to listen to myself. And I realized I was teaching one thing, but that's not the way I spoke. And I decided, Ellen, you've got a music background. At one time in your life, you thought you were going to go into music. You didn't, but you still retained all that music stuff. And I thought, music can help me understand this. So first of all, I thought it's all about the economy, stupid. Remember James Carville in Bill Clinton's, when he was running for president? That's what James Carville said. It's all about the economy, stupid. And so I said, it's all about the syllables, stupid. And that's where I started, because I thought we've got to start at the very, very, very basics. And our basics are the syllables. So, we all teach, as part of pronunciation, we all teach words and stress on syllables. That's part of what we do. And so let's have a look at this. Authenticity. Notice how we're moving. Authenticity. We're going low, medium, high. That, by the way, is C, E, and F sharp. Those are our 3 tones in the English language. So authenticity. That's not very good singing, but you get the idea. So thinking about this, a syllable with no stress, as we were thinking about it with words, is the vowel is short, the pitch is low, low. A syllable with primary stress, the vowel is long and the pitch is high. And that's low, medium, high. A syllable with secondary stress, the vowel is long and the pitch is medium. Low, medium, high. Those are our 3 tones. And there's something missing here that we'll be taking up in just a few minutes. There's one thing missing here. So think about that. And I found this somewhere. If a word has more than 1 syllable, one of the syllables will be longer and higher in pitch than the others. And this syllable is called a stress syllable. Okay. And another little thing, how to stress a syllable, just change the pitch. Now, I stopped using some of these words because the students didn't understand them. So I just started with low, medium, high, which they could understand. But now here's the big big, big butt. And I wanted this called boom, and the dots were all sliding down, but that was beyond my PowerPoint capacity at the moment. So we've got to think about phrases and thought groups because, I taught a lot of stuff, compound nouns, and raising your voice at the end of a phrase, all sorts of things like that. But I never gave it a heck of a lot of thought. For one thing, I wasn't dealing so much with presentation skills. And after I retired and was able to get back into teaching pronunciation, didn't have to grade papers anymore, but wait until you start listening to it and commenting on videos. So I said, well, I got to think about this because I was training students to give high-level scientific presentations at international conferences, seminars, etc. These were graduate students in engineering from Japan, and they needed to be understood. And this was crucial because people had to understand their research in order to start thinking about giving them grants, supporting their research, collaborating. So this was high stakes. So I had to figure all this out because remember, I just started with peaks and valleys and anchor and the other one and prominence and all this stuff. So when we speak in phrases, we deal with many syllables and only one or two syllables are stressed out of all the syllables in a phrase. Now, this is crucial to understand. And these are the syllables of words with meaning. Because remember, if you're speaking with meaning, people can take notes on what you're saying. But if you're just speaking word by word, nobody can take notes because they don't know where the important words are. Because English is music. And we use music to say, this is important, or start here, continue to here. So there's a lot going on. So we keep syllable length long and short for all syllables. Remember I told you to remember that? Because when you're just looking at a word, you're not thinking about syllable length for all syllables. You're just thinking about it for the syllable that you're working with, and all you've got is short and long, and you've got high and medium. So these are maxims. We show stress with medium and high pitch. And here are some of the old ways we used to teach stress. And I did that. Now, Dickerson was a very kind person. He said, look, I'm ashamed of myself. I used to teach this way. That doesn't mean everybody taught that way, but he said the majority of people. And he said he was taking responsibility for what he had done in the past. So we taught students to stress some, if not all, important words, such as nouns, adjectives, adverbs, verbs, demonstrative pronouns, negatives. We taught only low and high pitch for stress. And we did, now this is something most of us did. And remember, Judy Gilbert started all this. We did teach words at the end of a phrase were important. And that's sort of the way English is constructed. It goes towards the end of a phrase. It marches there. So this is the baby to keep in the bathwater. Because what he was getting at was, you don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. You keep what's good. And that was really what he was after in his title. So here's what a sentence often sounded like. And notice here, I've got medium, I've got low, and then I've got, well, it looks like the high got screwed up here, but I will do, no, this is the old way we did it, sorry. These results were influenced by the metal's efficient conduction of heat. And I was standing up in the classroom teaching that stuff, and I wasn't listening to myself. I was just teaching content words. And I thought I was doing a great job. But, and this was music to the ears of students of same stress syllable languages. So what we have to think about now is the fact that, we do this by intuition. We have language intuition. They don't, and they won't have it for a while. And so they're going to adopt their first language intonation right into English. And so, boy, this was hot stuff. I don't have to do anything. Now, this was wrong. And I really thank Professor Dickerson for bringing this to my attention. Okay, so the new way, and what I'm going to call authentic speech, is we teach students to stress only one or two important words in a thought group or phrase. And that's going to be syllables, really. That the first important word in a phrase or thought group is medium in pitch. That the second and most important word, and that's going to be syllable, is high in pitch. And this is what I consider really the thing we had that wasn't clear. Because remember, he was presenting research. He wasn't doing applied. So that we always keep the length of all syllables long and short. Sorry, I made a little mistake there. So we always keep the length of all the syllables long and short. So that means that we're not stressing to show important word or important syllable, we're still keeping length in that word. And that we change the pitch of the syllable of the word to stress the word, and that's going to be high or medium. Okay, so that's what we do in authentic speech. And here's something that's very important. A stressed syllable is not louder. It is just longer and higher than the other syllables. Now that's really important because most students want to start yelling the stressed syllable because they think, hey man, this is important, I got to yell it. And it's really important to say, no, we're working with we're working with low, medium, high, long, short. And that's what we're working with. And that's what I tell them that we're working with. So the new stress pattern is going to sound like this. These results were influenced by the metal's efficient conduction of heat. Now that's the way we really speak. But I wasn't teaching that. And then I started to listen to myself. And so this is our natural stress pattern. By language intuition, it's our first language, or we're highly competent as a second language. That's what we do. So I'm going to say, let's try it. And I see that it is 11:26, so this is it's going pretty well for time. But the reason I spent so much time on introducing it is I had to go through all of this to understand what he was getting at. Now we also have to talk about what are some differences in these two Englishes that affect pronunciation. I found this. There's 10 of these sentences, or 5 of them. I found this on a piece of paper that was left in a Xerox machine. I have no idea. I can't give it credit because I have no idea where it came from. But let's look at conversational English versus academic English. In conversational English, we'd say a triangle has 3 sides, but a square has 4 sides and they all have straight lines. But if we're pursuing academic English, whether written and we've got to read it, or whether we're giving a high class presentation, while squares and triangles are similar because both have straight lines, a triangle is 3-sided and a square is 4-sided. Now, I had another example here, but it seems to have disappeared unless it comes up on the next slide. But one of the things you're going to notice, it's a much more complex vocabulary and much more complex grammar. So this is also something we have to think about in certain presentation skills, that the authentic way is going to be very, very important for more complex types of teaching. So let's start and have a look at, I've got a sample sentence here. And first of all, I've marked the pauses off. And remember, this is something you will do with intuition, but then mark important words. The first one is green, the second one is blue. Now, this is all by itself. You know, I showed you all the things about what happens along the bottom. But we're going to do this in a different way, which I think is easier way to teach students. So if you look here, just a second here. Okay, here, I'm going to have to go, well, just a second here. I was trying to do something really smart, and maybe you shouldn't try to be really smart when you're doing one of these things, is that I was trying to do this black screen, and the problem with the black screen is that it blocks out some of the things that you need to do. Okay. Okay, now, okay, there's one more thing I have to do here. And I think I can get us back in business here.
In case some of you arrived a little bit later than the beginning of our session and didn't check your email, I'm going to send out again in the chat a link to where you can download the handout that Ellen's going to have us use.
Okay. I think what I'm going to do here, instead of fooling around, I'm going to just go back to something old-fashioned here. And we're just going to do it this way.
Yes. Do you want to be sharing a screen with us now?
Oh, sorry.
No worries.
Sorry. Thank you so much. Okay, can everybody see it now? Thank you. Okay. So then in the next one, you've got to decide what are the important words. And for yourselves, you just say, I will tell you all about caffeine. I will tell you all about caffeine. That's the way I like it. So I'm going to make tell as green. Okay, I will tell you all about caffeine. And caffeine, this is where you've got, this is the syllable that's going to be. Okay, now notice here that today I will tell you all about caffeine. Now notice with about is at low pitch, but you still have the length. I will tell you all, and all too, I will tell you all about caffeine. So you keep the length of the syllables even at low pitch. This is crucial because that's what really makes the difference in people understanding. Because you're not going to say, I will tell you all about caffeine. It's, I will tell you all about caffeine. So at the low pitch level, you're still keeping long and short. And then you've got your next, and what it actually does. And so I'm going to go here. And then here we're going to have blue. Okay. and what it actually does. And notice what is going to be long, what it actually does, and then to the human body. And this is real important because in this case, I don't want this to be a compound noun. I want it to be adjective noun to the human body. So I'm going to make this green. Okay. And so what it actually does to the human body. And notice here, I've really simplified this. I've done away. I do teach the students all the length and dots and everything. That's schematic. But it seems to be easier once that I have done that to actually just have the students look for the important words and look for that pitch. And then as they go along in the bottom, just naturally pronounce the words as they would. So let's look at another one. This one I have already marked up, and I'll make this a little bit larger. And this is part of your handout. But notice here, I have done all the, so you've got low, you've got medium, you've got high, but notice in experiments, we still keep the length experiments. And so all of this relates back to one word where you have syllables that are low, medium, high, long and short, but you don't have all these lower ones when you're just dealing with one word. So you're going to have the data from the experiments should be analyzed carefully. And then simple molecules are converted into more complex ones. And notice here, I don't have, there's just one stressed syllable here. And you're going to be tempted to say simple molecules, but it's not that way, simple molecules, because you're moving from simple into molecules. So simple molecules are converted into more complex ones. And let me give you another one here, and I'll make it a little larger if I can do that. Okay. Again, a cascade of reactions resulted in the production of a thick substance. And, I do keep showing the students this, long and short, but I really have simplified it because they have to know what's happening. And, and I'm teaching engineers and they like the schematic, but in reality, the better way to go about it is, okay, what's the first important word? What's the next important word? And you have to mark off the phrases, of course. Now, this is working it out. And you can do that if you've got a really, really big presentation. But also, once you've learned this and you know the schematic, and the students know the schematic, they start to be able to use it. And so I only do all this complex stuff at first when I'm first teaching it. And believe you me, it took me a long time to perfect this, and I'm still not completely satisfied. So let's look at another thing. This is your turn. And you've got suggested thought groups, phrases have been marked. And so the directions are pick out the stressed syllables in each thought group. Some thought groups will have only one stressed syllable. Now you do have this, that Marcia gave to you. I just want you to concentrate on looking at, and one good way to do this is water is absorbed by the seeds. Is to just speak it as you normally would. And think about, where am I stressing and where am I not stressing, but I'm still doing length. And like the sample was tested for the presence of contaminants. The series of reactions should be watched very carefully. Okay, I'm going to give you a little while to just play with this. Okay, everybody, here are the answers. Now, I do want to tell you that the answers don't have to be, I mean, there's adjustments that you can make, of course, on what you want to stress, but this is just kind of like a general one. So this would be your first one. Water is absorbed by the seeds. And notice absorbed is, I still do absorbed. I don't go absorbed, it's absorbed. I still keep the way the word is, but I don't raise the pitch. The sample, again, thing with sample, the sample was tested for the presence of contaminants. Now, some of you might want to emphasize presence. That's okay. You would do it as green. I chose not to because I'm moving everyone to contaminants, the presence of contaminants. Now, some of you might be noticing that once you start using this actual type of intonation, you notice much more movement in the sentence. Water is absorbed by the seeds because you're moving the sentence instead of stopping all the time. So when water is absorbed by the seeds, you're moving. And that makes it much easier for someone to understand a presentation. And here the sample was tested. I chose just to do this one. And the series of reactions, notice the series of reactions should be watched very carefully. So notice you can hear the length at the low pitch, and that's crucial. That was the part that I had such problem understanding, going from peaks and valleys to actually, okay, what is really happening here? So I'm going to stop the share now and say hello to everybody.
Why don't we just invite everyone to turn on your mics and ask questions or make comments?
Or actually mute until you want to speak, because otherwise we're going to get a bunch of clatter. So when you want to speak, if you unmute, that would be great.
I have a question. First of all, thank you so much, Ellen, for this. When I did the first one, it sounded to me like water is absorbed by the seeds. That absorbed was my highest pitch. And I'm just wondering, yeah, if it depends on what you're emphasizing, right? A little bit.
And yes, because you've got the tools. You know that the highest one is the most important word. The medium one is leading you to the most important word. But yes, you can choose what you want to emphasize. I just did it as kind of a general thing, but you can choose. And I think that's very, very important because, you know, we emphasize things that we want to emphasize. And you just realize, okay, that's blue. When I first started teaching with color, it was a disaster. But then I finally got it down to where I think you guys understand, hey, you know, it's blue or it's green. I can't tell you how difficult this has been to work out, but I'll tell you what the reward has been. When at the end of some of these programs, we have students give a 15-minute presentation, and it's all on their research. So it's complex. And people say, hey, I can understand. And that makes me really feel it's been worth 3 years of trying to figure it out. I even sat down and talked to Dr. You know, to him about it. And he said, oh,
Dr. Dickerson, huh?
Dickerson, yeah.
Right.
Hey, listen, you know, in this COVID-19, I can't even remember my own name, let alone his. I sat next to Dr. Dickerson and I said, look, I'm really working. I know what you taught us is true. This was a couple of years later. And he said, prominence. I said, well, what's prominence? And he said, prominence. So it's taken me a while to work it out, but I'm glad I did. But I'm going to now talk to him and say, look, I've got it worked out. Also, the University of Michigan Press has been waiting for this because in the book, and in the book where some of this appears, it isn't clear either. So anyway, another question. Thank you very much.
I would say I also consider the word absorbed as being more important than water, but it's all about where does this sentence sit within your whole speech? Because you're imagining, I often talk about, and I'm sure the rest of you do too, is about things that are old information versus new information, that new information carries more weight, or something that you want to emphasize, that you can emphasize anything. Yeah. So when you're saying that water is absorbed by, what happens to the water? Well, it's absorbed, so you have to kind of think about that. And it just reminds me, recently, well, somebody writes to me and says, okay, you're the pronunciation doctor, can you answer this question? And they gave me this sentence that was, like very short. And they said, well, which word did you stress? So I made a little video, which is on my pronunciation doctor website, that actually goes through several different ways to stress this, depending on what the context is and what you're thinking about. But I think the good takeaway here is, because you're working with students who are on the higher end of spoken English, right? We're not working with beginners. We're working with people who are very, very advanced, have a lot of very sophisticated vocabulary, and their sentence structure is sometimes way too sophisticated for speaking. It might be great for writing, but you have to teach them to break it up into smaller segments for the auditory audience, right? And then not to keep on stressing all of them, but to pick these two, like, okay, which one is the kind of the lead in and which one is a boom. So those, having that kind of that exercise for students who can write and think with such big and multisyllabic words in long structures is, I'm sure, very important for people's understanding of what they want to say. So
I'd like to break in here. I feel it's important to start teaching this almost from the beginning, because the schematic is true for conversational English. And also, we're talking about, people in sophisticated sentences. When you're presenting research, of course, you've got to have sophisticated vocabulary. You can't just talk about stuff. But also, you have a schematic and you can figure out, well, what is it I want to stress in this part of in this part of my talk. I think what's important here is you've got a schematic, you know what happens, and people can then decide, what is it I want to stress, and this is how I stress it. Because I think people were fairly lost, just like I was with prominence. So you have to kind of figure those things out, and do not discount this as far as lower levels or conversational English, because we do the same thing when we speak. I also want to bring up the fact that many times, particularly at a presentation, you have to read aloud, even in a classroom. You have to read aloud, and that's when it's really important to, how you can't understand a thing when some people are reading? They're not using any of the stress. And so you're completely lost, because nothing is guiding you, because your ear says, I'm listening for the important words. And then it's my job as a speaker to use intonation to give you those.
So I have a question, please. I just want to clarify something that you said. The first important word is medium in pitch, correct?
Yes, that is in a phrase.
Right.
If you have two important words, the first one is medium in pitch, yes.
Okay, and that's going to be green.
Yes.
The second one, the second word is high in pitch, and that's going to be blue.
That is correct. Now, you don't have to use this,
No,
I
it's okay.
just started.
No, I like the methodology. My students, I mean, reading and conversation are two completely different things. You don't have a whole lot of contractions when you're reading. It's always, I was going da 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 da, or I am blah blah blah, and we don't speak like that. So there's always things you have to explain to them between reading and conversational speaking, and then not everybody has a standard English accent, so to speak. Some people do a little lifting at the end of everything, as we call it, the valification. I'm from DC, you all are in California, so we call that the valification, the Californification of the language. And depending on where they've been before they've come to the East Coast, they might hear a lot of that lilting at the end.
I'm from Michigan.
Yes, love Michigan. Beautiful there. Right, love Ann Arbor. It's stunning there. But so yeah, those are just some of the things you have to explain to your students anyway.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's just a ton of things to explain. And I've just given you, something kind of, fairly simple that can be applied. But what has astounded me is the students have been able to learn this.
Right, because I think too, when they listen to television, Netflix, whatever, I mean, we're speaking like you and I are speaking right now. We're not thinking, oh, I've got to go this, and I've got to go this, and I've got to hit this verb, and this noun, and
exactly.
This. We don't speak that way. So the more they listen, like you said, they get the rhythm in their ear, their brain networks start to collide. And
yes.
Go, okay, here's the rhythm, here's the music.
TED Talks are wonderful because you can hear and look at the transcript. And the new research says reading the transcript along with the speaker is very valuable.
Totally.
And also, the kazoo also works because hearing what goes on and then not hearing the words, but hearing what goes on, that is also, that's also helpful. Now, when I started all this, I called up Channel 3, which is our NBC, and I said, when do you decide to use subtitles? Because they'll be interviewing people, and sometimes there's someone comes on, and English is not their first language, and maybe they start running subtitles and maybe they don't. So I expected a wonderful answer that would answer everything I needed to know. Guess what? Oh, we just do that when we can't understand them. And then I looked at it every single time, it's intonation. And that's what Dr. David Allen Stern told us. He said, intonation is your key. Yes, you teach all these other things, but for understanding, intonation is it.
Right.
And I would listen to those and the intonation was off. So therefore, I didn't know what word was important and what wasn't. I mean, you can make every R and L, but if your intonation is right, we understand.
That's right.
Thank you, Denise. That was very, very helpful.
No worries. Thank you.
Any other questions?
One thing that I wanted to bring up, if I may, I thought of it too, and I noticed that it's also in the chat, is that the colors, I mean, I love colors, so I colorize a lot of things. But one of the things that I would recommend, it may not have come up in your particular group of students, because color blindness between blue and green is the most common color blindness there is, that you might want to choose different colors. And also there, like just the whole idea of using colors as a key. I know that there is a lot to be said about accessibility and so forth. You're just doing it in your classroom, so if it hasn't come up as a problem with your class, then that's not too much of an issue, but that probably for all of us to consider, maybe red and green or
yeah,
because,
what
like
I will do
things.
is I'll consult the Disability Resource Center on campus, and
great.
they'll be able to tell me. And I think that's a very good thing, because I've always been very, very careful with the print that I use, that everyone can read it, that it doesn't have those little things on the bottom, because people with dyslexia can't read it. And I've been very careful with that. And now I've got to find out.
Are you talking about serifs on
serifs? Yes.
Yes.
Yes. And I've been very, very careful in the classroom never to use serifs, But
there's interesting discussion about whether your eye travels better with serifs or not.
I don't know. According to the disability people here, they have recommended without serifs. So, maybe there's been some new research. Who knows? Another question.
Yes, can I ask you something? Well,
absolutely.
I'm a Spanish speaker. Actually, I live in Argentina. And
I saw people were coming in from all over the world, and welcome.
Well, welcome to California.
Thanks. Well, we have a problem that we tend to stress every single word, because in our language we do so.
Yes.
But I have used this question of dividing units as you suggest. So because I think it simplifies things for students. But we add something that is very important for us. That is that when we stress, especially at endpoints, as in the chat is mentioned, we ask them to rise or fall, because that's difficult for us, right? So I was wondering if you do so too, when you teach your students, if you ask them to go up or you go down.
Yes, I absolutely do teach that. I didn't work with it today, but yes, it's a side issue. It's very, very important. And I'm glad you brought out the difficulties with Spanish speakers, because length of vowels is another crucial issue. Instead of saying buenos dias, so yes, and I'm glad you brought that up, because there are a lot of side issues. I just kind of taught this one thing, but there are a lot of side issues that you're going to have to teach. What do you do with a list? What do you do at the end of a phrase? I was just trying to get words with meaning, but there's a lot of other stuff too. Thank you for bringing that up. I really appreciate it. And welcome, a big welcome.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
I just had a comment, Ellen. Thank you so much. I've gotten some great takeaways from your presentation. But what I wanted to mention was I've taught a lot of Spanish speakers, Russian speakers, and Brazilian Portuguese speakers, and they have a lot of cognates, multisyllabic sorts of cognate words, and I find that that's really tricky for them. Because there is that language transference with the
absolutely right. absolutely I mean, I'm grateful because I speak French and Spanish, and the cognates are wonderful. One thing I noticed about French speakers, and because I deal a lot with them, because I'm always hunting for a student that speaks French and we can exchange, but they in French, at the end of a phrase, you lengthen the syllable, and that really helps. And because when they speak English, that really helps with meaning, because they automatically do it. But all of the reason I got into these schematics was, when I learned French, it was all grammar translation. We had no labs. I mean, look, I've got white hair. You can figure out that there weren't any labs when I started learning French. Before that, I learned Latin, and you didn't need a lab. But, we didn't have any of this. And so all of us, like 2 years ago, in a French language, teaching magazine that I take, they showed a schematic for French. I looked at that and I got it instantly. I said, if I can give this to my students, wouldn't that help them? Because, I'm working with engineers, and they like to see schematics. And it certainly helped me with French. So I kind of try to pass on what problems I have in my language studies, and integrate it into the students' work. Thank you, Heidi.
Thank you.
If there's anybody else who would like to make a comment or ask a question or propose something, we do have some time for it.
Ellen,
Yeah.
there's a question that
Okay.
came up in the chat from Kristen. I'm going to read Kristen's question to you from
Sure.
the chat. So
Thank
she
you.
asks, you bet, if you're working with students on exercises in prominence, such as you've been showing us today, and other issues come in, like segmental issues, do you deal with them in that moment, or do you wait and deal with them separately?
What particular segments was she talking about?
Just in general, nothing in
In
particular.
general, I deal with it right away. You know, I was at UC Davis when Judy Gilbert was here. So you can imagine I've been bathed in segmentals and super segmental. Yes, I deal with it immediately.
Thanks. And Ellen, I've got a question for you as well.
Sure.
In the beginning, you identified this scheme of finding 1 or 2 important words per thought group. So I wonder if you begin with students by talking about thought groups and how to identify them, or if it's backwards, if you identify the important words and then identify the thought groups around them.
You know, I haven't really thought about it, and I think I've done it both ways. You know, I think usually I talk about the fact that, you know, we've got thought groups, you know, and what are we going to do inside those thought groups? I think that's my preferred way, but it would be okay first to look at important words because that's what you're aiming for. I wouldn't have any problem with teaching it either way, Randy. You know, I think with this, you have to go with your gut feeling because, you know, I'm showing you what I've done and I'm showing you, you know, what the research and, you know, what Dickerson, finally I remember his name, has done. But I think you really have to go with the flow. You know, how would you teach it? How do you think it through? Because that's when you're going to come across as genuine. You know, because I can only give you so much, but, you know, and I think someone was saying, you know, picking out thought groups is difficult. And also with students, some of them are not ready for those longer thought groups yet. They don't have enough gas to get to the finish line. And sometimes they have to do shorter ones. But, you know, as they practice it and as they become, you know, more and more fluent, they can get into the longer thought groups. I mean,
one of the things that you're showing us is that you take your students who you have with you and you develop your lessons along with the proficiency level of your students. Not all of us are teaching at the same level as you are. You know, you're teaching a pretty high level. Yeah. And so when we're teaching in other classrooms, we have to change the sort of the starting point of where we go from there. So being able to teach this concept at a really low level might not work because they don't have enough words. But as they develop the ability to speak longer sentences, then you can introduce these sorts of concepts. And the idea of using thought phrases and chunking longer sentences will come as they are able to compose.
Yeah. Well, it's sort of like, you know, I ski a lot. A coach can tell me something. I might not get it for 3 years, but if he or she didn't tell me that 3 years ago, it ain't up here. And it's not going to happen. But, you know, one of the things Dickerson doesn't say to teach, he doesn't like it, is, you know, songs and things like that. I have no problem with that because simple songs like roll, roll, roll your boat gently down the stream. That's all music. That's all pitch. And you know, and we do jazz chants. Because it starts them, they begin to hear that English is not this static language. So I don't agree with him on that, but you know, if you don't feel if you don't feel comfortable with singing in class and stuff, don't do it. You know, don't do stuff that you don't feel comfortable with.
Okay, I think it'd be nice to thank our presenter very much for giving us the opportunity to hear about the new intonation, as well as some tools for developing our skills in bringing this intonation pattern to our students. So that's great. Thank you so much to Ellen for the presentation. Okay, so I wanted to end with a few notices. One is about the free offer to all English language teachers to use the AM English online programs. And since we're doing remote teaching, AM English has offered us the ability to get free subscriptions, not only for us as teachers, but all of our students as well. If you send an email to info@sunburstmedia.com with AM English in the subject line, and then you tell your name and your school and a little bit about what your teaching situation is, and then we can get you set up. Okay, so that's one thing, but now I want to also tell you about what exciting options we have for you in teaching of pronunciation coming up. So our upcoming topic events are next month's April 19th, John Levis from the Iowa State University Applied Linguistics. We'll talk about why it's important to teach different suprasegmentals, and he'll provide a number of ideas to introduce suprasegmentals to learners of English. So that's teaching suprasegmentals. Why and how? And then Marla, you want to wave to us? You are here today. Marla, who is one of my previous co-coordinators of TALK, will do a presentation May 21st at the same time, 11 o'clock. And she's going to demonstrate a whole bunch of activities that we teachers can use online with our students. So trying to adapt the things we usually do face-to-face with remote teaching, and also introduce a few online tools for practice in pronunciation and other areas. So that's what's coming up next month and the month after that. Don't forget that we also have the CATESOL Spring Conference, May 7th and 8th. So put that on your calendar. Go to catesol.org to make sure that you find out about that and register for the conference, because there are lots of presentations on that 2-day event. If you're not yet a member, and there are some people in the audience who are not yet members of CATESOL, do you have to live in California? No, you don't. You can live anywhere in the world and still join CATESOL and be able to gain a lot of benefits from our very vibrant organization. So with that, I'll close and thank all of you for your participation in today's event.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for coming.